All right, students, let's get started. I'd like to begin class by getting 4 volunteers up here. Won't be anything too exciting, just some reading out loud. Okay, now each of you have the paper that we passed out at the beginning of class. Please either read from that or from above, and we'll have you be person A, B, C, and D. We're practicing the different ways we can use modals. And students, please make sure to be listening. I want you to be thinking about who you think gives a solution most appropriately. Okay, go ahead, students. Okay, wonderful. And if I can actually have a group of 4 more volunteers. How about you? Okay, everybody, wonderful. And let's have you read this. Take your time. Okay. Now, we have people read them different ways. Keep in mind that there's different ways to emphasize how you answer. For the first one, I could say, oh, well, you ought to fix the heater. I might say it as oughta. You might also say it with a little bit of judgment in your voice. Well, you ought to fix the heater. We don't know how it's intended exactly, but I'm going to have you each pair up to the person to your left and go ahead and discuss who you think answered the most courteously or politely or appropriately. We're keeping in mind that you don't want to be demanding when somebody is looking for help. All right, class, let's come back together now. What did you all think? Okay, and what about you? And your group? So in each scenario, we had somebody share a problem and then they asked, what can you do? Now this is something we will often ask, and we don't actually mean it to say, what can you do for me? It's more of a rhetorical question, a question we do not want answered, that we do not think has an answer perhaps, or we think the answer is obvious. In our culture, when we say, what can you do? It's often with a shrug of the shoulders, as if there isn't anything to be done. This is a good note because sometimes when you want to provide advice, people may not want it. But when it does come up, there are many different ways to do it. So you were sharing who you thought provided advice most appropriately. Let's go ahead and take a look now and see what are the different ways that these person B, C's, and D's did share. So let's see, person B. They used our giving advice modals that we've talked about. What you have got to do, what you are able to do, what you ought to do. Now, let's take a quick note back at those examples from person B. Do you remember how those modals are different? Take a look. You ought to fix is one example, which may not be the one we're looking for. You have got to. Yes, good. We have the to at the end. That's going to be common with these giving advice modals. What do you notice about this verb have? It matches the pronoun. Good. That won't always be the case. We don't usually change our modals, but for these ones that person B is using, we do. Now, person C, they use our modals for ability. They were giving advice, but they didn't use their giving advice modals. That can often be a way to approach an idea without telling someone what to do, but more just mention that that is an option. Now, person D, take another look and tell me if you see what those both have in common for person D, up here and down below. So they are both questions. This is a great opportunity to help yourself review the structure, the order. So you have these as examples of how to make a question. Many times, at least in American culture, I'd be curious to hear about yours, you can provide advice in the form of a question. Now, tone still changes how it is taken, but that may make it more acceptable. Okay. Now, we have a few scenarios below. I would like you guys to go into the same pairs, and you will take turns. One person reads scenario number 1, one person reads scenario number 2. After reading scenario number 1, the other person is responsible to respond. And when you respond, you must give 3 different ideas of how to solve the problem. This may be difficult to find 3 solutions, but in addition to finding 3 solutions to share, you need to ensure that you have one of each kind. You should have one of the modals from giving advice, one from ability, and one also from ability but as a question. So go ahead and take a moment, pair up and go through those together. All right, very good. Now I'll ask you guys to switch to someone new, and you're going to do 1 and 2 again, but this time you get to do the scenario or the solutions mixed, switch it from what you did before. We'll do this throughout the rest of the class and then come back together and discuss what you found. If you have any questions, I'll be walking around to listen to see if there's any error correction we can do. I hope you guys have a good time finding solutions for one another. Thank you.